problem for him is everyone's struggling with that front tyre this weekend, whether it's the hard tyre or the soft tyre. And that means that for Johnny, considering the problems he's had with the Yamaha, that's only going to exaggerate it as well.
The level of support seen earlier this week on Media Day at the special press conference organised for Jonathan Rea in his honour, as he said his goodbyes to everyone. It was certainly showed the huge respect that everyone has for the greatest of all time in World Superbikes, and the paddock is certainly going to be a poorer place without the great Northern Irishman, just psyching himself up there, getting ready to go out on track for this 20-minute free practice session. Of course, big changes coming up for Yamaha next season, as Andrea Locatelli is joined by Xavi Vierge, moving from the Honda setup as the riders head out onto track then, ready for this 20-minute session to get dialed in for later on. Cooler temperatures at the moment, but the track temperature already up to just over 16 degrees as the sun rises over southern Spain. Beautiful lighting conditions, I have to say, for this free practice 3, and this a chance for the riders to explore the grip once again and get set up ready for today. Alex Lowe, as we see there on the Bimotor, said that his front grip was dropping yesterday as well as the temperatures rose later on in the day, but he still has strong hopes of podiums here today.
Yeah, I think for Alex, he's going to feel pretty confident going into this weekend that he'll have that chance. The one thing for it is, you know that by and large Top Rack and Bullock are going to take those top 2 spots as they have for much of the season, so that means that you're fighting it out for one place left on the podium. That's where top 5 is a realistic target for a big group of riders, and then it's just a case of who's able to find something during the course of the race to give themselves the chance that little bit extra to finish on the podium. That's where someone like Bautista, important for him to be able to finish 3rd in the World Championship. He's up against Locatelli for that. He'll be in the mix. Locatelli will be in the mix. If Sam Lowes is fit enough, he'll be in the mix. But the longer races are going to be a struggle for him. The Super Pole session and the Super Pole race, they're his best chance of a good result. So there's plenty of riders in that 3rd to probably 8th or 9th position that all feel that they've got a chance this weekend.
Yes, it was very close behind the 2 championship protagonists in FP1 and FP2 yesterday. And of course, the battle for 3rd in the championship is on between Andrea Locatelli and Alvaro Bautista. Sadly, Danilo Petrucci no longer a factor there. He's out with that hand injury sustained training in the gym. Sam Lowes, you mentioned already, also not 100% fit, out with a training rib injury. So he was struggling with at the previous round, did not race at Estoril last weekend. Xavi Vierge has shown some good pace this weekend, meanwhile, in his final weekend for the Honda team, and he's reasonably confident that he could perhaps join the podium fight this weekend as well.
Yeah, and I think that for the riders trying to chase down that podium, someone like Vierge, it's obviously going to be very difficult for him to do that. The one thing for him is trying to come away with top 6 finishes to finish off his tenure with Honda, and then you move on to Yamaha, riding as well as you have in World SBK. And I think that ultimately for someone like Xavi, that would be a really good result at the end of this weekend. And same can be said for the likes of Iannone as well. It's had a good start to the weekend.
Yes, Iannone loves the Jerez circuits and shook off a spill early on in FP2 to show some much improved pace. He was in the top 3 of FP2 yesterday, showing his liking for the hotter conditions. Meanwhile, Ryan Vickers turned out to be his final weekend with the Moto Corsa team, as of course things not turning out as planned, as we mentioned at Estoril last week for the independent Ducati rider. We'll wait to see what his plans are for the 2026 season. Gary Montella has a new teammate this weekend, Nicola Spinelli making his return in place of the injured Danilo Petrucci for the Barney Spark team. Also, the other change to the lineup this weekend, Alessandro Del Bianco coming in for the GRT Yamaha squad, replacing Dominic Egerter, who is out with a hand injury sustained in training. Ike Lecuona, his final weekend for Honda as well. It's all change as Honda, both on and off track, with new management coming in as well for 2026. Ike Lecuona will be moving on to replace Alvaro Bautista at the factory Ducati squad, of course, as announced a couple of weeks ago, as the first times start to come in. So, of course, competitive times not really relevant in free practice 3. It's all about setting the bike up for Super Pole in a couple of hours' time. But Top Rack already looking good out there, looking, I'd say, a little more comfortable than he was yesterday already in these cooler conditions. Niccolo Bulliger starting to get onto the pace as well. Razgat Leonglu's first lap of 1:40.057.
Yeah, top rack, about a second and a half slower than he went yesterday, so just building himself in. We'll see what his pace is like as the session goes on. It's around about 16 degrees track temperature at the moment out there. Yesterday, the readings that we got from some of the teams said it was in and around that 45 degrees mark, and a little bit tricky for the riders whenever the track temp's in that range, because, as I said, for BMW, they want it hotter. For Ducati, they're happier whenever it's in that range as well. So for top rack, that caused a little bit of the problem for Yamaha as well. It's about trying to get that bike into the right window.
The other issue this early in the morning here in the south of Spain might be visibility in places with the low sun as well, but it certainly hasn't had any effect so far, and a very quick time in his first flying lap for Niccolo Bulliger there, 1:38.799. Still a couple of tenths off his pace from FP1 yesterday. He's right on it already.
Bulliger looks like he's out there on the softer tyre as well, just trying to get that feel for a quarter of a second off his pace from yesterday. So good lap from the get-go from him, and now it's just a question of how long it takes for the other riders to get down to that speed as well. Plenty of riders able to get into the 38s here this weekend.
Yes, Bulliger knows he has to defeat Toprak Razgatlioglu in race 1 this afternoon to take the title fight to the final day of the season. If Razgatlioglu wins today, he wins the title. It is as simple as that. He's got to stay ahead of Niccolo Bulliger to win the title on day 1 today. Otherwise, we go to a final showdown on the last day of the season. Sam Lowe's looking a little more comfortable than he did yesterday, but as you said, Steve, it's those longer runs where Sam is going to feel the effects of that rib injury he recently suffered from in training. Failed to race at Estoril last week, but that Mark VDS Ducati certainly has the potential to fight for podium places this weekend. Yeah,
for Sam, when we looked at him yesterday, we were able to see that on the bike, he's fast, he's confident on the bike. The issue for him is just having that fitness and having that longevity out there. That's where I mean that the Super Pole race, probably his best chance of being able to come away with a good result. But we'll have to wait and see how he fares after this session. He did FP3 in Estoril and then sat out the rest of the weekend. He'll be doing everything he can to make sure he doesn't have to sit out any of this weekend. But ultimately, it comes down to, as he's said a few times, it comes down not just to his fitness out there, it's also the risk that you pose to the riders around you. So we'll wait and see just how Sam fares.
Biggest lap of the weekend so far for Niccolo Bulliger, 1:38.421 for the lap record holder here at the Jerez circuit. Set that in Superpole last season, a 1:37.5. Alvaro Bautista, we saw just a little bit of a moment for him out of the final corner. His final weekend for the factory Ducati team. He'll move on to the Barney Spark machine in place of Danilo Petrucci for next season. Jonathan Ray looking fairly strong here as well. Said that he was well off the pace yesterday, perhaps penalised by not testing at Jerez earlier in the summer, but he wants to confirm things here in these cooler conditions this morning as he tries to improve and gets his grip improved as well. Grip really was the key word for everybody from yesterday's feedback.
Yeah, the biggest issue is just trying to decide which front tyre to use for a lot of riders. Both of them didn't seem to give the riders a lot of confidence just with the wear rates and the feel that they had on the edge of the tyre. And it just comes down to whether or not you're able to find that steps with the settings as the weekend goes on. But certainly when you move from Friday into Saturday, you give yourself that chance overnight to have made a big step forward.
Max Albasani on the second of the Bimotors has struggled for consistency so far in 2025. 10th position in the championship so far this season, but showing some improved pace here this weekend. He's currently third in the times as we come up towards the halfway point of FP3. Of course, as we said earlier, not a competitive session, just all about dialing the machine in for Superpole later on. Bulliger just going quicker and quicker, though, nearly a second faster than everyone else so far, just on a 1:38.234. So eager to fire a warning shot, perhaps, to Toprak Razgatlioglu, who is currently back in the pits. Well, he's just left the pits, actually. A quick chat with his crew chief Phil Maron we saw a moment ago. It's Bulliger quickest, Jonathan Ray in second, Axel Bassani third in the time. So perhaps the cooler conditions mixing things up a little as the riders experiment with tyres and setups ahead of Superpole. It's certainly going to be a very interesting day, whatever happens, as we watch Jonathan Ray here down into turn 1.
Yeah, you can see Johnny breaking down in towards T1, and it's very uphill into that section of the track, so it means that you're really able to break in deep into the corner and then try and fire it through on the exit. And the riders carry a lot more speed through there than you think.
Very intriguing circuit, this one, with quite a few elevation changes. It's quite a long lap at just over 4.4 kilometres through the hills of southern Spain. A terrific venue for motorcycle action, has been for many decades now. We've seen several title deciders here over the years.
Good lap put in there by Lowe's again, down in the 38s, and just trying to build on what he needs to do for his consistency. This is a track that suits him well. He'd be disappointed with the fact that he's picked up that injury and not at full fitness, because this was one of the circuits on the calendar he had definitely circled and said, this is where I can really show something.
He'll be replaced by Xavi Vierge, as we say, for the Yamaha team for next season. We watch Alvaro Bautista currently in the lower reaches of the top 10 on times in this session. He'll just be looking to improve and try and finish ahead of Andrea Locatelli, who's a couple of places behind him on pace so far this weekend. Bautista was quite a way down the times in yesterday's session. Another rider who seemed to be struggling a little for grip.
Let's just ride on board with Toprak and just see what it's like for him down in towards turn 6. This is the heavy braking zone, 280 k's an hour, all the way down to one of the slower corners on the circuit. And for Toprak, it does look like he's a lot more comfortable on the bike now than he was yesterday. It looks like he's really able to throw it into those corners, but that's with the fresh tyre. It'll be all about what happens as that tyre wears for Toprak. That's going to dictate a lot for him, but at least it looks like he's got that speed, and we'll see what his lap time is, but you'd certainly expect that he's going to be down into the low 38s on this lap, probably down into, say, 38.4 or something like that.
Of course, the manufacturer's fight is still on between Ducati and BMW. Speaking to BMW yesterday, in the early part of the weekend, at least, they are concentrating everything on Toprak at the moment. They want to get the riders' title out of the way first for understandable reasons. Then they'll consider the manufacturer's secondary at the moment.
Yeah, you can see for Toprak there breaking in towards the last corner there. Doesn't have that big endo and trying to get the bike stopped. Let's see what his time is when he comes across line. 38.2 is the fastest lap of the weekend. Toprak's just gone faster than that, so a good final sector as well. That's where Bulaca's been stronger than Toprak, and on the fastest lap for Bulaca, he was a tenth of a second faster than Razgatlioglu, but still able to find enough on the rest of the lap for Toprak.
Yes, good stuff there from Toprak. Clearly the early analysis with crew chief Phil Murram working out well there. For
Bulaca, his last time around was a 38.249, which is a hundredth of a second slower than his fastest lap, so he's been able to put in a couple of low 38s, and he's on for a good first sector now as well, so they're both just giving themselves those opportunities. This is down into the last corner. I said the Toprak didn't have his big endo down into there. He's just able to break into the corner and just control that on the run into it, but not with that big heavy braking style that we usually see from Razgatlioglu, where he gets the bike stop and then applies a little bit more pressure just as he's dragging it into the corner.
There's contrasting methods going into this FP3. Bulaga went all out in attack from the off to try and fire a warning shot to BMW, I think there. But Toprak has been more analytical. You saw him back in the pits early, talking to his crew chief and the team down there before going back out, getting the setup right, and that has worked for him so far. These two 7/10 of a second clear of Sam Lowe's now in third place on times, as the temperature just starting to rise here at the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto. See what Toprak can do this time around. Bulaga has lost a little bit of time in Sector 3 this time.
In Sector 3, but stronger in the final sector, so Bulaga should be the first rider that gets down into the 38.1s, you'd imagine, on this lap, but we'll see what he does as he comes across the line.
He goes better than that, 1:38.062. Nicolo Bulaga back to the top of the times here in FP3. Ahead of Razgatlioglu. Sam Lowe's still in third place ahead of Bautista and Ray.
Yeah, they've got nearly 9/10 of a second in hand over the rest of the field. So Bulaga and Toprak just once again just showing that little bit of extra class that they've had all the way through this season.
Yeah, they're certainly a class above the rest at the moment. They have dominated the season between them. It's been quite a rare event, it has to be said, when they've been defeated or even out of the top two on occasions in any race so far this season. Such has been the dominance of these two, but of course the dominance of the pair will end next year when Toprak moves on to MotoGP with Pramac Yamaha. Nicolo Bulliger will be the red-hot favourites for the championship on paper going into 2026 as he remains with Ducati with new teammates Iker Lecuona. Of course, Jonathan Rea retiring, the end of the Titanic trio as they're known. Toprak not happy there with some traffic in front of him by the look of things.
Yeah, you catch the traffic in the wrong place and it creates a backlog there, and obviously we saw Tito Rabat's the bike in front, but there's two bikes in front of Rabat. It looked like it was one of the Moto X bikes, and I'm not too sure who else. Maybe it was Del Bianco on the GRT bike as well.
That's Del Bianco, as you mentioned, replacing Dominic Egerter, who, according to reports this week, will be heading back into the FIM Supersport World Championship, which he has won in the past next season.
Bulliger down into the 37s, and just continues just to show that raw speed. And when you look at his stint summary at the end of this session, it's going to make for difficult reading if you're Razgatlioglu.
Yes, indeed. This is perhaps going to unsettle Razgatlioglu slightly. It's all getting psychological in this title battle so far.
This is where it becomes critical for the role of the team to point to the big picture for Toprak as well, because Bulliger's obviously got a really good package underneath him this weekend, and it's about winning the World Championship. It's about trying to make sure you get across the line for that. And ultimately, we've seen it in Aragon. We saw it in Estoril as well. Toprak was willing to settle for second in a couple of races there just to make sure that he got exactly what he needed. And it might well be a case that he has to do something similar here.
Big improvement from Xavi Vierge there to go into P3, 138.7.
One rider to keep an eye on, Del Bianco, is out there and halfway around the lap. He's on a really strong pace, only a few tenths of a second off Bulliger. So he's clearly doing a qualifying tyre simulation just to give himself that little bit of confidence and experience in that rubber.
Yeah, it's coming towards the end of this free practice 3 now, just over 4 minutes to go. So some teams will go into time attack mode at this point and do simulated qualifying laps ahead of Super Pole. Later on, it's coming up at around 11 a.m. here at Jerez. Toprak, we've seen this frustration here at the traffic ahead of him. Is the pressure getting to Toprak perhaps slightly, especially with Bulliger in such flying form? Oh, there's the reason we see there.
That's a different one. That's into the last corner. Rabat had been in front of him on the run through the fast right, yes. And just unnecessary there from Razgatlioglu.
Yes, he's looked more and more unsettled, I have to say, as the weekend has gone on here. I was just saying, is the pressure perhaps getting to Toprak slightly here as we go into this title decider? Del Bianco, we mentioned there, he's gone up into P4 in the times, the substitute rider for the GRT Yamaha team this weekend. There's certainly a mix-up in a mixed order behind the top two at the moment, perhaps due to the cooler conditions here. Different teams, of course, trying different things, different tyre setups. Remy Gardner now goes up into P3 on a qualifying run at the end of the session here. And the other riders looking to improve. Jonathan Rea is one. Now, we know Xavi Vierge has improved his pace towards the end of this session. Sam Lowe's looking strong as well, having initially slipped down the times. He goes to P2 now. Has got the Oglu down to third.
Yeah, the 38.1 there for Lowe's, quarter of a second off Bulliger, and just able to get that bit of confidence with the softer tyre as well, just to see how that's going to fare. But lots of riders making that step. Taz McKenzie up into the top 10 as well, so plenty of riders putting in that soft tyre just to get that understanding maybe ahead of the Super Bowl session.
Yes, another is Jonathan Rea, another is Axel Bassani as well, currently on a run on that softer tyre. Rea down in P13 at the moment. He will improve this time through, just behind Toprak there as they come over the line with 2 minutes left on the clock. See where Rea improves to. He goes into P4, 138.23 for the Yamaha man, ahead of his final Super Pole of his career a little later on this morning. So the Yamaha's looking reasonably strong here, to the satisfaction of Paul Denning, their team manager. Talking to him yesterday, the team getting ready to start testing next week, already looking forward to next year. They'll have Xavi Vierge on the machine for the first time on Tuesday. JBMoto will be testing this coming week as well. Alex Lowe's and Axel Bassani staying with the team for the 2026 season. Sam Lowe's, meanwhile, will stay with Mark VDS for next year. Certainly shown some brilliant flashes of pace this year, but frustration at times for Sam Lowe's. He's on a quick lap here, and slightly up on Bulliger heading through Sector 3, but couldn't hold it through Sector 4, remains in P2. See what Alex Lowe's can do here. Was improving in the early part of the lap. Could move up into the top 5 in the times here. Less than a minute left on the clock now. Does improve his time with a 1:38.387. All these riders on their final effectively simulation runs for Superpole later on, just trying out that softer tyre. Bulliger still at the top with 1:37.8, not quite close to his lap record from Superpole last season, but I reckon we could see that fall a little bit later on. Bulliger was up in Sector 2 on his current lap. Has lost a bit of time in Sector 3. We know he's strong in the final sector of the lap. The Ducati certainly stronger there. Doesn't improve on this lap. Checkered flag about to come out on free practice 3 here at Jerez. Final setup changes being made ahead of Superpole, and traffic becoming an issue again.
That's the same group, and that was when Bulliger came through on them, and then Toprak came through a couple of corners later, as we saw.
So traffic's certainly an issue for both of the top 2 in the championship here, as the checkered flag does now come out on free practice 3. Wait for the final times to come in as the riders cross the line. The lap will have gone here for Bulliger with that traffic, but he looks set to be top of the time once again. He was top in both sessions yesterday. We'll see if Razgat Lioglu can improve. Just looking at the split times, it looks like he's not going to on his final lap of the session. Just in behind Bautista there. Bautista further down the times in P12, has been a little off the pace so far over the course of the 3 free practice sessions. See if he'll improve come Superpole. Ray still well up. He said he'd be experimenting in this session with the cooler conditions, looking for better grip, and desperate to at least reach the top 10 this weekend. Was disappointed with his pace yesterday, Jonathan Ray, heading into his final weekend, so we'll be pleased with his improvements here. Majority of riders have now taken the checkered flag. Razgat Lioglu comes across the line. Bulliger will take the checkered flag as well. Won't improve on his final lap of 1:38.4, but he will top the session. So Bulliger 3 out of 3 at the top so far, certainly firing a warning shot to Toprak Razgat Lioglu. They said earlier he needs to win today to be assured of the World Championship with races to spare. If not, we're going to a final showdown on Sunday here at Jerez. Jonathan Ray back in the pits, just talking to his crew chief there. He'll be satisfied with his improvement in this session, I'm sure.
Ultimately for Ray, it's about what he's going to be able to do after the 8th, 9th, 10th lap of the races, and the Superpole session about 11 o'clock, that's going to be the key thing, because it's about trying to find the right rider to follow. It's about giving yourself the opportunity to make sure that you're able to qualify further up the field.
And now the final practice starts taking place out there, and then the setup process begins, ready for Superpole a little later on. It is Nicolo Bulliger who tops this session, looking to make it another fastest time later on. It's certainly going to be a very competitive Superpole, never mind the first race coming up this afternoon. Sam Lowe's will be pleased with his performance there, splitting the 2 championship contenders as well, but it's the longer runs that will affect him later on with that rib injury he's carrying. Hopefully he'll be able to go the distance, because we know the Mark VDS Ducati has got plenty of pace. Been a slightly frustrating season at times for Sam, with a few spills. Razgat Lioglu in 3rd in the times, and that will give you the full classification, including the combined times, in just a few moments' time. Movement from some of the Yamahas there. Xavi Vierge showing some good pace on the Honda as well. We're going to see some good battles, I reckon, for podium places this weekend. Quiet session for both Bautista and Locatelli there, though, the pair battling for 3rd place in the championship. They were further down the times.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to who's been out there trying to do that full qualifying simulation, who's been out there on the X tyre, who's been trying to to just build on something and try and figure that out. You can see Toprak brings the bike into the pits, and obviously for Razgatlioglu, it's been a tough weekend. We've already seen that frustration boil over on a couple of occasions now for Razgatlioglu, and definitely one of those situations where for BMW important just to be able to get their rider into that right frame of mind. You can see there that for Locatelli, Del Bianco, Rabat, ultimately it's 4 riders on track. Toprak has more speed than them, but we'll have to wait and see what the sector times were like to see if anyone was particularly cruising. But this incident, just totally unnecessary from Razgatlioglu in the session, and not the kind of thing that you're used to seeing from him. That's a very uncharacteristic decision in a free practice 3 session that's meaningless to try and put yourself in that risky position.
There to see something like that from Toprak. It's not in his character at all, and even the team looking quite shocked at what that was all about. So the pressure perhaps getting to the world champion slightly there. Just debriefing with his team there, but he's clearly unsettled, clearly frustrated with things so far this weekend. It's not been the BMW man's weekend so far here at Jerez, and hoping for improvements in Superpole later on. So we'll take a look at the times then from free practice 3. Nicolo Bulliger the quickest, with the quickest lap of the weekend so far, 1:37.892. Sam Lowe splitting the 2 title contenders. Jonathan Ray improving up there as well. And the 2 contenders for the bronze medal in the championship, Locatelli and Bautista, a little further down behind a few riders experimenting with the softer tyre, doing simulation qualifying runs towards the end of that session. Combined times, Bulliger, Lowe's and Razgatlioglu the quickest, all improving in that 3rd free practice session of the weekend. That says the vast majority of the field, only Iannone and Ryan Vickers not showing improvements on their times there. Consistent running in the early part of the session. Bulliger going into attack mode from the off there in the 1:38 right from the beginning. 2 shorter runs for Sam Lowe as he just tries to get settled in for this weekend. Toprak 1 long run in the latter part of the session. More analytical work taking place, as we saw with crew chief Phil Maron early on. In terms of the sector times, Bulliger